Howdy, howdy. It is episode 4 of Reclaiming Leadership with the Good Business Witch. This episode is titled Give Us Pockets or Give Us Death. And it's actually inspired by a segment of my forthcoming book of the same name. So if you like the vibe of this episode, you're going to love Break Up with Burnout, my forthcoming book. And that is tentatively going to be out in like June of next year. So super excited about that. Manuscript is still in process. But as I get my notes together here, because, we got a lot of them. Let's talk pockets, y'all. I love pockets. I went on a sundress buying spree before going to Key West this year. I love Key West, favorite place on the planet. Pockets are just great, especially these days, like hand sanitizer, last year, like being able to shove your mask in your pocket, like, yes. And I was so stoked because I went to Old Navy and I found just a wealth of dresses with pockets. I'm like, oh my gosh. So I'm like shoving my hands in my pockets and doing the twirl and all the things, right? All the things we ladies do when we get pockets, especially in a dress. They're freaking fantastic. I love that I can shove my big old phone in the pockets of a dress, especially like when I'm tooling around the house. My office is upstairs, so I like to just drop my phone in my sundress pocket or my jeans pocket and go downstairs. Or when I go on a walk with Pluto, I need to have my phone with me. Pockets are a necessity. And they're great for all that. And I also I love it. Like there's something about the power move of putting your hands in your pockets and just like taking up that space. But I know I've got some interesting stats for you, actually. When it comes to jeans specifically, because sundresses, like you can have those big old long pockets and, with the silhouette of the sundress, like they're usually big and flowy anyway, so it's not a big deal. But with jeans, it's a different story. With jeans, our pockets are 48% shorter and 6.5% narrower than men's. And only 40% of front pockets in women's jeans can actually fit one of those big smartphones. I found that on a really interesting site. It is on pudding.cool. And that was just so cool. I'm going to put the link in the show notes because they actually have one of those really cool graphics where as you scroll down the page, it shows you the different sizes of men's versus women's pockets in like skinny jeans and regular jeans and I think cargo pants and all these things. And you can actually see them measured side by side. And you can actually click on things and say, oh, put this in the women's pocket. Oh, put it in the men's pocket, like a phone or a wallet or hand sanitizer or a pen. And it is just, it's shocking. Like I knew our pockets are ridiculous. I've got a pair of jeans that is a pair of boot cut jeans. Now the back pockets are nice and big. The front pockets don't even come up to like my middle knuckle on my hand. What's the point? It's ridiculous. But it's not just about the decoration or how women's silhouettes are supposed to be better or look better with smoother, smaller pockets. In 1954, Christian Dior said, men have pockets to keep things in, women for decoration. You know what? Screw that. It's so crazy to me that we've been complaining about our pockets for over 100 years, like literally. In 1906, Charlotte P. Gilman wrote an article in the New York Times, and she said, one supremacy there is in men's clothing, it's the adaptation to pockets. She goes on to write, women have from time to time carried bags, sometimes sewn in, sometimes tied on, sometimes brandished in the hand, but a bag is not a pocket. In 1910, there was a fashion show at Hotel Astor in NYC. and they had a suffragette costume. And when it debuted, it was extremely popular, had 2 pockets in the front, 2 in the back, for a total of 7 or 8, kind of depending on records. And this is fantastic, right? In our pockets, we have privacy, we have security, we can carry all our stuff. And it's not new. In the medieval era, both men and women wore bags tied around their waist or hung from their belts. It's a lot like kind of like the fanny packs that we see in Ren fairs, or like the pouches. I just love some of the leather pouches. They're so cool. And as places became more urbanized, then you have a greater diversification of wealth. So you started having pickpockets, all that. So people started hiding their pockets under their clothing. Okay, cool. So follow me on this one. So men would hide them under jackets, women would hide them under petticoats. So if you ever have the opportunity to go onto YouTube and search historical fashion or fashion historians, and you look at like 1700s garb, you'll actually see like part of their process is they actually tie their pockets on. And then the women have like petticoats and skirts that go over that have slits along the seam in the side where they can slip their hand and actually access that pocket. And some of those pockets are really big. They're like 12 to 24 inches deep. I mean, like they're like bags on your waist, which is cool. I'm like, can I have one? That's awesome. It wasn't until the late 17th century that pockets started to become part of men's clothing. So they were like the permanent pockets that we expect today in jackets and pants and that sort of thing. And of course, they weren't there for women's fashion yet. So women still had these tied on. Fashion then started to evolve, right? We hit the French Revolution. There is a rejection of the over-the-top stuff. So instead of these big Marie Antoinette style skirts that were just big old huge things that you could have a big pocket under and like shove your hand into on the side, we started having some thinner silhouettes, some thinner materials. People were exercising a little more restraint in their clothing because that decadence just wasn't fashionable. You didn't want to be like the wealthy people that had just literally lost their head. The thing with pockets, especially during the Revolutionary era, is they are private spaces. And we have seen for centuries the differentiation between a male's space and a female's space, right? In terms of like where men are welcome and allowed to go and where women are welcome and allowed to go. And then the things they are welcome to do and allowed to do in those places. Well, during revolutionary times, if you have a woman with pockets, she can hold secret pamphlets in there. She could even hold a weapon, and there's more freedom in it. And unfortunately, as we know, during the time of the Revolutionary era, right, the American Revolution, the French Revolution, freedom was not the domain of women. It was really only the domain of white men. It was the place that white men could be. So if you're in these big crowds, if you're in these city situations, women start to feel limited in their freedom of movement, right? If you can't carry things like maybe a political pamphlet or some money or, gasp, a letter from a lover in your pockets close to your body, and instead you have to be carrying them outside in a bag in your hand or on your wrist, it becomes very dangerous. So let's get back to the suffragette costume because I think this is so fun. In 1891, the Rational Dress Society emerged, and they were like, look, these corsets, this tight crap, it is bad for women's health. Like, it's physically bad. And we know now that they were absolutely right. I remember touring a Victorian era home in Fort Worth when I was in high school, and they had turned this into a museum downtown. And we went up the stairs, and there was this landing upstairs, and there were like 3 different chaise lounges. Well, they were like, those aren't chaise lounges, those are fainting couches, because the corsets would be so tight on the ladies that when they got to the top of the stairs, they had to sit down because they would pass out from lack of oxygen. Yeah, crazy. Smash the patriarchy. Anyway, the Rational Dress Society was trying to do that, right? They were saying these are dangerous. Instead, let's do boneless stays, because we understand we want to keep the feminine silhouette. They're operating within these bounds. But to have stays and not corsets anymore that have no bones in them. So there's like, you can breathe, to have bloomers, and also to have loose trousers, which I did not realize that was a thing until I started doing this research, because in like the 19 teens and 1920s, you had women who were being arrested for wearing trousers. And, Katharine Hepburn, when she came onto the scene, I believe it was in like the mid 30s, like she was wearing trousers. And she was just scandalous. Part of the reason it's scandalous, with trousers come pockets. I love this quote from The Graphic in 1894. The pockets of the new woman, admirably useful as they are, seem likely to prove her new fetish, to stand here instead of blushes and shyness and embarrassment. For who can be any of these things while she stands with her hands in her pockets? Boom. Power move right there. I love it. Pockets were then like, oh, no, this is a man's thing. In 1895, a designer of women's bicycle costumes, so think like a bathing costume, but like for bicycles, included pockets for pistols. He said, an anonymous tailor says in the New York Times, not all of them want to carry a revolver, but a large percentage do, and make no bones about saying so. Even when they do not tell me why they want a pocket, they often betray their purpose by asking to have it lined with duck or leather. This is 26 years before the 19th Amendment, and women were like, hell yeah, I'm going to protect myself. Absolutely. Do yourself a little favor and go research the history of hat pins and how women started using these 12-inch long hat pins that would hold their hat on their head to defend themselves against sexual predators. You'll thank me later. So coming back to the suffragettes. So we had in 1910, we had that suffragette costume. And then in 1913, there was a serialized cartoon showing a man dressed in like his nightgown and all that, because people wore nightgowns and whatnot then, and while his wife was asleep, and he's going through her skirt. And the caption says, when wifey dons suffragette pockets. Again, women could carry all kinds of things, right? We could carry, pamphlets, weapons, money, all the things. And there's a beautiful, beautiful statement by this amazing woman I've found. Her name is Chelsea G. Summers. She's an ex-academic. She's a former stripper, and she writes about sex and fashion. Like, how's that for a byline? She said, yeah, I mean, of course, we could carry all these things in handbags. But as she noted, the handbag is always in danger. Pockets can be picked, but purses can be snatched. And if you think about it, somebody can pick a man's pockets, but in all likelihood, keys are in one pocket, phone's another, wallets in another. They're only making out with one of those things. Whereas, somebody were to grab my bag, they would get all my wallet, they'd get my keys, they'd get my phone, they've all of it. And so it's very, it's vulnerable for us, right? Independence comes with not having to keep up with a handbag and lose everything at once. Pockets provide independence, and it seems like such a little thing. But pockets are a symptom of a larger problem, right? And there's many, many problems here. And so I want to switch gears just a moment and chat about the broken rung. We've all heard about the glass ceiling, right? In 2008, I love Hillary Clinton's speech where she said, although we weren't able to shatter that highest, hardest glass ceiling this time, thanks to you, it's got about 18 million cracks in it, and the light is shining through like never before, filling us all with the hope and the sure knowledge the path will be a little easier next time. Her next speech, where she referenced the glass ceiling, was in her concession speech to Trump, and so it was a little less optimistic. But when it comes to the glass ceiling is not something we need to worry about so much as the broken rung. And the broken rung is the challenge that women face on their way up to the glass ceiling. It's that first step to becoming a manager. And think of it as the rung on the ladder to success. Men end up holding 62% of manager-led positions, while women hold only 38%. And of course, that's worse for women of color. Lean in their 2019 study, said if the broken rung were fixed, 1 million more women would be added to the management positions in the nation in just 5 years. Unfortunately, too many people think that we live in a world of a zero-sum game, meaning that when someone wins something, the other party loses. We see it in politics, religion, social interactions, and of course in the workplace. There are too many people, mainly men, if we're being honest, who believe that if women advance in any way, men lose out. And honestly, in reality, we're all better off with women in leadership, women in manager positions, women who have pockets, women who are able to move around the world, literally and figuratively, with freedom and independence. So if you think about pockets and you think, oh, this is just a little fashion conversation, I have news for you. It goes so much deeper. Thanks for tuning in today. I hope you learned something. I hope that I tickled your fancy. I do want to give a quick shout out to an article that was really instrumental in helping me put together a lot of this research. It is by Chelsea Summers, and it's on Vox.com. It's The Politics of Pockets, and I'll link that in the show notes as well. If you need anything, please reach out. I'm excited, so excited to start Break Up with Burnout, my 7-month program coming up here in October. And if you would like more information about that, please reach out to me directly. You can find the podcast online always at reclaimingleadershippod.com. And there you can leave me a message. You can check out all of our episodes and just kind of get to know me a little better. And I hope to see you here next time. And I hope you have a fantastic rest of your week. Chat with you soon.